Hi everyone, welcome back to our Meet the Financial Services Team post here on LinkedIn. Today we're joined by Steven Griffiths, the Delivery Lead Manager at Avanade for Financial Services. Steve, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
In the flesh, because we've spoken many times on Teams, and it's
Yeah.
really nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, you too.
Yes.
I want to ask you, you've been in banking, capital markets, private equity for 25 years. It's a long time. What have you seen? What's the biggest change across the industry from your perspective?
So I think there's been three key events. There was the pre-9/11 world within investment banking and finance, and that world was very much a deregulated world, very much about volume of trading with as many customers as you could. There was less regulation around, and it was very much an exciting place within the investment banks and the P&L that could be generated. And then, of course, 9/11 came in, and that changed the landscape significantly. So post 9/11, what started to matter was things like the Patriot Act and know your customer, anti-money laundering, and a lot of regulatory pressures were put on across the sector to ensure that actually, there was no monies that were being traded through the system that would help kind of fund terrorism. So that created a lot of regulatory pressure, a lot of investment went into technology to help us support that. And then finally you have 2008 with the financial crisis, where a lot of trading, a lot of activity within financial services was about holding risk on the balance sheets of the financial firms. That significantly changed after the financial crisis in 2008, because all of a sudden the regulators said that actually now you had to hold liquidity against your customers, you had to have a certain level of liquidity at the end of the day, and also you needed to start to, there was a lot more focus on regulatory reporting. So for example, Dodd-Frank with the DTCC, and having to go MiFID reporting, lots of extra reporting, which meant that the investment banks and financial firms had to be much tighter, much more controlled, and much more able to understand their trading and their flows of data. So that's from an industry perspective. The journey for technology within the sector is slightly different, in that in the early days, obviously things were much more bespoke, kind of more monolithic type platforms. Data was very siloed, and there was no real cohesion about how the view of the customer across the banks. Then we started to see the commoditization of platforms post 9/11, where we would start to see things like KYC, commoditized platforms, anti-money laundering platforms. Prior to that, they were actually mainly written individually by the individual banks, and companies started to build these. So you started to see this growth of commoditization. You start to see commoditization within the data space, etc. And then, as things progressed, you started to get into high-speed algo trading, lots more impetus on the ability to make quick decisions about what was happening in the markets. And then obviously the cloud computing came in, which really started to then commoditize and build out what I would say the Lego bricks or the building blocks of commoditized technology. So instead of actually having to build from the ground up, you would choose which building blocks of technology you're going to use, and you would combine those to provide business solutions. And that's very much where we are now. The new thing that's coming in and is accelerating a lot of this building is artificial intelligence. And that's going to be, a kind of interesting point is now technology going to be the next disruptor in the financial services sector rather than it being an external factor?
That's exactly where I was going with my next question was, when you're having a conversation with a client, what are they doing differently with their operating models, whether that's from a tech standpoint or a business standpoint? What are you seeing? Is there a shift with an AI focus? Are you seeing a lot of that?
Definitely, but I think the shift started before AI, and I think there's been an understanding. A lot of firms need to break away from their manual processes and holding their data on classically within the financial services, especially in the SMC world, lots of processes and lots of data has been held within Excel sheets, and lots of analytics have been done on that. And I think there's now an understanding that actually what is really important is to start to put that into a proper modern data platform, such as Azure, etc. Fabric, perfect example of that. And what is happening now is with AI is the ability of, as firms go and do that and get their data governance and their quality, and they're able to now build out on their modern workplace and their ability to give them important people information without them having to go hunt for it. So on their desktop, Power BI reports, but also now with AI is the ability then to go and drive insights on the data that actually a human being would not necessarily be able to find. And I think that's an exciting new element that's coming through with
Absolutely.
AI.
Well, I mean, it's going to help, the real decision makers have a much more informed decision-making process, I guess, with all those analytics. So what separates a company from successfully transitioning to those that obviously don't have such a successful transition? They don't really get their return on investment immediately.
I think a key thing that I've seen where companies are very successful in their transition is where they have a North Star and a guiding principle, or I would say a technology and strategic blueprint. You don't have to go and build and deliver everything in that blueprint in the first iteration, but what it allows you to do is when you go and make changes, be it people, process, or technology changes, you know where you're heading with that change, and you know what decisions you need to make sure you head in the right direction. And that allows you then to start to build up a program of small, iterative changes that are applicable to the business level of change within the SMC world, and make kind of, atomic but relevant changes that head towards very much an architectural blueprint, a business process blueprint. And I see, I see that is the way to be successful, and has been the way that I have been successful with my clients over the last, number of years.
Here's a question that's literally just popped to my mind, but I want to ask you it just to get your perspective. When we're doing these sort of transformations with clients, what's a common misconception that you see on a day-to-day within senior management at, potential firms?
Definitely. I'd say there's two key common misconceptions. One is that you have to make this a hugely expensive and very dramatic change to do this transformation, which often puts companies off doing that. And then the second one is a misconception that actually the business users will follow that transformation. And so adoption, so that's why I personally believe that actually transformation is about having this North Star, this blueprint where you're heading, but making lots of relevant value, quick to market atomic changes that head in that direction, that brings the hearts and minds of the business users on board. And they start to see the value of that, and they start to recognize actually this transformation is going to be really good for me to do my job and to improve my my output. And I also think, if you do that, what a business then is going to start realizing is making these changes means that they are going to be able to scale their business without necessarily scaling their people and without necessarily having to scale their processes. So I think it doesn't, you have to look at these things as being a 6-month to 2-year program of work, but not in a monolithic development way, just lots of small iterative value add changes that take you to this North Star where you're trying to get.
And my last question is what is your skincare routine? What are you doing on a daily basis? You look great.
That's very kind of you. And it's the first time I've ever been asked that question. And it's actually recently changed. So I've recently been using a combination, or there's a product called, I can't remember what it's called, Aegean, but it's a combination of olive oil and wild honey that I use on a daily basis. And it's really good.
It's working. It's working.
That's
very
kind of you. Thank you very much, James.
No worries at all.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you,
and I hope fantastic.
I hope that I've added some insights.
Absolutely. I think
yes.
for those that are watching, I think they'll be able to walk away with a lot of key points, which you've been very kind enough to share your time and provide. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For those that are watching, stay tuned for our next episode of Meet the Financial Services Team here on LinkedIn. If you'd like to book a conversation with myself or one of our industry specialists, please feel free to shoot us a message or drop a comment below.